What is going on, everyone? It is the Writers' Room. It is another Sunday, but it's a little bit different this Sunday. We got something substantial to talk about. There was football to be had. The Buffalo Bills come out with a comeback after the comeback, a 16-15 victory off the leg of Tyler Bass. And we get to talk about it, but we have a new face here, a familiar face, but a new face around these parts of town. Adam is back. How are you doing, man?
Well, I mean, I'm looking good, as we writers do. We look good, we feel good, we play good, and then we get paid well. Writers. No, I'm doing great. It's great to be back. I'm glad to be writing again, and I'm especially happy to be doing this show with the new chief, Zach Vaughn. So what a treat for me.
Zach, how you holding it down as new chief, and how did you think the first watch around was for that game? Because I know you just watched it right before we hopped on.
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, obviously, I was looking forward to this game, and even though I couldn't watch it live with the rest of you in the group work shift,
we're back.
Okay, he's back. He's back. Okay.
No. But yeah, no.
Oh no.
Having skipped through commercials, it was fine, and I took pretty substantial notes, and I think overall the Bills did pretty well. Obviously, it's a preseason game, so score doesn't really matter that much. It's more about figuring out who's going to make the tail end of the roster, and there were definitely some players that stood out to me for good and bad.
Love to see it. And Alec, you just strolled in, perfect timing, probably a busy weekend, I take it. How are you doing now that you get to talk about the Bills?
Oh, I'm ecstatic. I love to have Bills football back. Been waiting so long, and now we're all the way back. Football is finally back.
Yeah, it's different. There's like a different energy up in here. Like the chat's already rolling through. We already got 20 people in here. We don't even do like a crazy job promoting this show, but we got 20 people in here right off the bat within 3 minutes of showtime. So glad to have everyone here. We're going to go through position by position and give you guys our takeaways on just little things we saw. But before I do that, I got to pump up Adam's recent article. After hiatus, he comes back and he lets you know his 10 things that he thinks. And I got to say, it's an entertaining read. You get his personality out of it, but you also get some Bills takeaways. So, Adam, I'll let you talk about it real quickly, just like, the key takeaways from the things you think, and then you'll get to go obviously more in detail as we go through each position. And while you talk about it, I'll go grab the link and I can throw it in the chat for all the viewers.
Well, that'd be great. I mean, yeah, it's just a post-game piece. This is my old post-game approach of 10 things. I think, I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100%. There were a few things that stood out. One thing is I feel like I've seen enough of Jake Fromm. I'm thinking I'm done. I think I'm out on the Jake Fromm train. Sorry, Georgia fans, but I don't feel like I need to see any more. But he can play in the third preseason game before we cut him. That's fine. But the next big one was Andre Smith. I thought Andre Smith took an absolute huge step up. He looked amazing in the game. And to me, I mean, watching him, I feel like he's a roster lock. He's a guy I really enjoyed watching. I thought he was the best player on the defense for a lot of the game. And so he's a guy that I'm excited about, and I think he's really grown in the system.
100%. Definitely, yeah, a crazy game from Smith. He had a lot of snaps. I don't know if that bodes well for him or not, but he was good with those snaps. So that's what counts. I guess we'll start with it. I know you don't want to talk about Fromm, but we got to talk about quarterbacks, and Fromm's one of them. So I'll toss it around the room. But I do want to preface this. It's unfortunate we can't really talk a whole lot about Mitchell Trubisky. We just didn't really get a sample size from it. He had 2 throws, 1 completion, I think. The Bills wanted to run the football, and you can take that for what it's worth. But I feel like it's nice that they're trying to get a little bit more efficient on the ground, and hopefully it helps the offense holistically in the regular season. So I'll pass it on to Alec first and then Zach second. Alec, take your pick if you want to talk about Webb or Fromm, and then we'll toss it on to Zach next.
I'm going to talk about Davis Webb. I think Davis Webb showed us a lot in that game. He showed us that the running with Josh Allen into all the drills is really paying off. He's a lot faster than we thought, a lot more agile, a lot more athletic. He made some good throws. He made some quality plays on the field when he got the opportunity to. And I believe that he genuinely will be QB3 if we end up keeping 3.
Interesting thoughts, man. I'm definitely like dumbfounded by what's going to happen at quarterback 3. So Zach, I want to hear what you think. If you have anything to add on Davis Webb, by all means, go for it. If you have nothing to add on Fromm, I'll talk about Fromm. So yeah, what do you have to say about the quarterbacks?
Well, the main thing I would say about Davis Webb is I didn't really know anything about him. So when he took off on that first scramble and ran, I was like, wait, he can run? And then when he did the QB draw, I was like, wait, he can run?
Yeah.
He actually has wheels. And obviously, like, I saw that clip of him running with Allen. I just thought that was a practice thing and that he got a head start or something. But it was awesome. It was awesome to see him in extended action, and he looked pretty good. And then as for Jake Fromm, I guess my question is, how would he do in a preseason game where you didn't have Bobby Hart protecting his blind side? Like, let's be honest. I'm not making complete excuses for Fromm. He did look a bit shaky, a bit iffy, but he also had some flashes, like that great pass on that last drive to Stevenson. He put it right into his bucket. And I think that maybe Fromm was just, inexperienced. It's kind of like with Davis Webb, where he didn't have much reps in the past at the professional level. And Fromm's entering his second season, but for all intents and purposes, he's basically a rookie because he never saw the field. So whether or not he makes the roster at this point is likely trending towards not, but
that's fair.
He still has 2 more games to show something.
Let's talk pedigree for just a minute. I mean, Davis Webb was a 3rd-round pick in 2017, I believe. The guy has not played, any snaps. I mean, no one's seen him. No one knows what he can be. I mean, last night was as much of a showing for Webb as we've ever seen. And here's my question for you. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky, he throws 1 pass or 2 passes and completes 1, right? He has trade value. I don't know. From what I saw last night, is there potential for a QB2 competition? And if so, could we move on from Trubisky and get something for him? Because he has more value than Webb and certainly more than Fromm, a 5th-round pick, who I've already forgotten about.
I'll answer this with at least uncertainty, because I definitely agree that Trubisky has more trade value. Like, can't disagree with that. It's glaringly obvious. He is a starting caliber quarterback, although we didn't really get to see that kind of evaluation of him last night. The issue with that is just the insurance policy. If you trade him and anything bad were to happen, you lose that insurance policy and perhaps the reason for signing him in the first place. But maybe this whole time, the reason for signing him was insurance for other teams and kind of piggybacking and getting some value off of other teams' misfortunes, like a quarterback for, some team around the league going down, and then they come calling Brandon Beane, and Brandon Beane's like, yeah, we got one sitting around. He's starting caliber. So there's definitely an argument to be had on both sides of this. I personally stand more on the side of keeping Trubisky just to feel safe about this season. But it's to each their own. It's totally preference based. What I will add on Jake Fromm, though, I think Zach makes a good point when it comes to his protection. Tommy Doyle and Bobby Hart didn't look great especially on the plays that he got sacked. And then the positives I saw from Jake Fromm mostly was he looked very poised in the pocket. And sometimes that was to his own detriment because he was almost too poised and gets sacked because he has no sense of urgency to get away from a pass rush. But I did find that he was pretty poised in the pocket. It wasn't too big for him that moment. And he did come through and make some clutch throws. That one to Duke Williams was very close. I really would have wished Duke could have, pulled out an extra stride there and maybe hauled that one down. The whole day would have looked a lot nicer for Jake Fromm had that ball been completed. But I thought he looked all right, and he made, Ryan's boy, Marquez Stevenson, look pretty good too. So we'll get to that later. Anyone else have anything to add on the quarterbacks before we roll on to the running backs?
I would like to say one thing about this whole Trubisky thing too, is that obviously, again, yes, Trubisky does have a lot more value than Webb and Fromm, but there's a reason he has a lot more value. It's because he's a former starter, and the Bills got him at a bargain bin price to be their backup for Josh Allen, who is known to take a lot of hits, to put his head down, to try to get the extra yards, which lends itself to more injuries or possible injuries. And let's remember last year, those 3 times where Allen went down and everyone was scared because they knew Matt Barkley was the one coming in. Did anybody have faith Matt Barkley could hold down the quarterback room or position for an extended period of time? No.
They're playing the Jets many weeks in a row, maybe. Yeah.
Valid argument.
Exactly. But so the point is you bring in someone who has starting experience, who could right the ship or hold it down for like 5-6 weeks, maybe, if Allen were to go down. Not saying Trubisky would be a world beater in that time span, but he'd give you a better win probability than Barkley would.
And
no
that's why that. You're right about that. But here's the thing. I'm not suggesting you cut Trubisky. What I'm saying is that if like Webb does keep showing up as decent, right? And, a team gets desperate, because we've seen that before where it's like they overpay for some quarterback to come in at the last minute. So I'm saying in that particular, you don't cut Trubisky. His contract is amazing. But yes, in that particular context is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I guess to further my point too is like you think about, let's hypothetically say like the Colts or some team come in and say, hey, we'll give you a 1st-round pick for Trubisky because we need someone, and you got an extra guy. And then you say, okay, deal. Are you going to trust that Davis Webb could fill that hole, fill in as an insurance policy if Josh Allen went down? Or would that be another situation like with Matt Barkley, 2 guys who had limited starting experience in that capacity, and you ask them to come in and fill the shoes of now one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league now.
Right.
If somebody offered Brandon Beane a 1st for Mitch Trubisky, he's taking that every
10
day.
times out of 10.
That's the thing. Yeah,
sure
that's definitely the kicker. It's just like, if it happens, it'll be interesting to see. But I definitely agree, like, in that perfect set of scenarios that you laid down, Adam, like, it makes sense. It's really hard to argue against it because it's like Zach said, there are plenty of reasons to keep him. Plenty of reasons. Sure. He's a great quarterback. He's starting caliber. But on the other side of that double-edged sword, he's a starting caliber quarterback, and someone else may want him. So definitely goes both ways. It will be interesting to see how it plays out. I want to see him throw the football a little bit more next week. That would be nice to see, and probably drive up whatever trade value he would have it even more, probably. I would hope to assume. But we'll move on here to running backs, and I think the guy who really stole the show was Devin Singletary. New body, new me. I don't know, but he looked different. Zach, I'll start with you. If you don't want to talk about Devin Singletary, you don't have to, but I figure that's where you're going to want to start because to me, he was the MVP of maybe the game.
Oh, definitely. He just came out like he was going on to a revenge tour, and I think that's what this year could very well be for him. Like, I think the only thing I really wrote in my notes about Singletary, other than Pierre's amazing phrase of single daddy, because that was actually pretty good, is Tyler Dunn had the scoop, because he came out with that article, I forgot how long ago, where he detailed how Singletary was working with like a running back positional guru, kind of like Jordan Palmer with Josh Allen, except for the running back position, and that he looks better, he's more conditioned. He showed that off in this game. And it's just, obviously, he's on a man on a mission, and hopefully he can keep that up. And if he does, then it should be one hell of a season for a run game.
Yeah, 100%. He definitely looked like a new guy. Like he learned a lot. Like he was really quick out of his cuts. He wasn't just going down from arm tackles. Not that he was before, but like he was really fighting through any contact that was thrown his way, and he was running hard. And it was nice to see because he still had that agility to him, but you could see there was just like an ounce more of power to his game. You know, a little bit more purpose as he was running with. But Alec, now I got to go on to you. You can share what you want to say about Devin Singletary, but I know you were pumping up your boy Antonio Williams, so I am curious to hear what you have to say about him. But please talk about any running back you want.
I'm gonna start with Singletary. He ran extremely hard in that game, ran as hard as he did his rookie year, and that's exactly what we need out of him in this year.
Coming through, always
yes,
coming
sir.
through. Thanks, Alex.
But yeah, he ran very hard this game. He showed a lot of good things this game. I think he has solidified his spot as running back 1 for going into the season, just off of that performance. I don't know if I'd say he was the MVP of that game. I think I'm giving that to Tyler Bass just because I love Tyler Bass.
Yeah,
T-Bass.
But with Antonio Williams, I was kind of disappointed. The ball security thing, I mean, a fumble, that's tough to see. But I think next week is going to be a bounce back week, and we're going to see a nice week out of him. I think he's going to get more touches next week, hopefully, and we'll see. We'll be going back to seeing what we saw in week 17 of last year.
Yeah, I really hope we see it because I got to say I'm pretty disappointed with what he did considering Zach Moss was out. I really would have liked to see him step into that, those additional opportunities and really thrive with them and capitalize on those opportunities. But he just left a little yards out there that he could have gotten. He definitely was still running hard. Like you can still see it. The dude wants it. But also there was a nice reception that he made, I believe, on the top side of the screen, and he did fight through contact well. He spun out of a tackle and fell forward, which is kind of his MO. So you still see the upside to Antonio Williams, but I think it was definitely disappointing considering the context of how he had added opportunities and didn't exactly pan out how we all thought it would relative to, that week 17 game against the Dolphins. But now, Adam, I got to ask you, since he's the last one left, but of course you're allowed to talk about any running back you want to. I want to know your thoughts on Matt Breida since we haven't touched on him.
Well, I mean, I feel like we give Antonio Williams such a break because, he's one of our happy stories. But let's be straight here. The guy averaged 2.1 yards per carry against a pretty sorry Detroit Lions defense, the backups for that defense. Just to be clear, I mean, Breida's getting killed today, and he had a better yards per carry. And let's face it, besides Singletary, nobody looked great in the run game.
Right.
Breida did not look great last year for Miami. He was not, what we saw in San Francisco, and that's about scheme. And you got to wonder, is there a way that Daboll and this offense can utilize Breida in a way that maybe he's not he's not going to be an every down type of back. He's not going to be like a Moss or a Singletary, but maybe we can find like a James White role for him or something. Yeah. I think he's got a lot of potential. I like Antonio Williams, but to me, he's practice squad material. I don't think he's making the team. And based on the performance I saw the other night, I wouldn't want him to make the team. No offense, Mr. Williams.
I mean, I'm kind of with you at least where we stand right now after the game. Like, Breida is getting trashed. I don't see it. I tweeted it out. I'm genuinely confused why he's being, his value is being dampened after, it was definitely a poor game, but it wasn't as bad as the stat line might suggest. And I think it was like 7 for 15 or something like that. Maybe that was Williams, but Breida wasn't much more efficient than that. But I really do think you have to read between the lines when it comes to Breida. I did do a bit of a film breakdown on my Twitter, and I liked how he was embracing contact for someone that is perceived as a speed guy and a receiving threat. He was embracing contact and fighting through tackles, falling forward, like I said with Antonio Williams. But there is a little bit left to be desired when it comes to vision. I mean, Devin Singletary is just great when it comes to reading blocks and finding the right gap and accelerating through it. But with Breida, it looks to be a little bit of indecision. But I mean, if he gets decisive with the gap that he picks to run through, he has that momentum and at least some of that drive and fight to fall forward for yards. And we saw it on that almost first down pickup where he had like a nice little stiff arm and fought through it. So I don't know. I think we gotta dial it back a little bit with the Breida hate after that game. It wasn't great by any means. I think a lot of people were hoping he would be the kind of adrenaline shot this running game needed because of his speed factor. And we didn't really see it that game, but I think it's encouraging to see the other side of it, him not just being a one-trick pony, a speed back. So yeah, I did kind of like what I saw from Breida, although the stat line might not suggest that we should like it. But before we move on, is there anything else specifically on the running backs that you guys want to touch on before we move on to a weird wide receiver day?
I wanted to say one thing, Mr. Shrek. I don't agree with you that Singletary is locked up the starter position. I mean, I want to see more out of Zach Moss. I'm keen to see what he looks like. Toward the end of last season, it seemed that Moss was starting to take that role, and I'm not sure Singletary has yet taken it back. So I think right now they are truly tied in that starting position, but that's my take.
I agree with you as of at the end of last season, it was starting to become Zach Moss's job. The thing is with Zach Moss is the injuries, the hamstring injury in practice, the ankle at the end of last year. I think for the first couple of weeks, we will see running back one, Devin Singletary, and he will be getting a bulk of the carries. But there's definitely a strong possibility that Zach Moss will, by the end of the year, end up as running back one. Completely agree with you there.
Yeah, I'm very similar boat. Actually, really with both of you. I'm a Moss stan. More preference-wise, I like Moss's running style to Devin Singletary's. Not to say one's better than the other. So based off the knowledge we had last year and how Moss was getting more of those RB1 type looks, yeah, I kind of went into the season assuming Moss would be running back one. But obviously after game one and injuries and all that stuff, it seems like Singletary's probably going to have the job right away, but it's up for the taking. This is running back by committee. There is no true running back one on this team. So
one last note, and this isn't quite running back, but how about short yardage specialist Reggie Gilliam?
Yeah.
2 touches, 2 first downs. I like that. And that boy's a beast. And if they could, install him there, I wouldn't mind that. A little less Josh Allen getting killed with 1-yard runs.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, it's very efficient. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they sneak him onto the roster. Obviously, the fullback designation might help. It might hurt. I have no idea what the plan is with Reggie Gilliam, but I got to say he came through with those opportunities on Friday night. So definitely encouraging for Reggie Gilliam, the special teams ace outside of that. Mm-hmm. So we'll move on to wide receivers here. And like I mentioned, it was a really tough day to assess anything about the wide receiver room because it was just such a run-heavy game. They really did everything they could to install their run packages and see how this offensive line looked and the depth levels of the offensive line and, the new running backs, things like that. So it's definitely a hard evaluation, but I'm curious, what do you guys want to talk about? Because it's tough to do anything with the Kumerow Hodgins debate. And really all I think that's left to talk about is Marquez Stevenson. So I'm curious, anyone want the floor on wide receivers?
So we're only talking wide receivers, not wide receivers and tight ends, just to be clear.
I mean, you could move on to tight ends too. We could do pass catchers if you want. Truly, whatever you guys want, because this is it's tough to get a whole segment on wide receivers given the game we just had.
Well, I'll start. I mean, I wanted to see Isaiah Hodgins get more targets. He had the 1 target and the 1 catch for 13 yards, and it was solid. I mean, but I wanted to see him get targeted more. I would have liked to have seen Trubisky thrown to him, particularly. But if we are including all pass catchers, I got to shout out to my boy Tommy Sweeney. I'm part of Sweeney's. And listen, when Sweeney and Knox got drafted, I was as high on Sweeney as I was on Knox. I know he's not quite the athlete, but Sweeney, I think, could be a really dependable. Here's the thing: Knox is a lot of great things, but he's not dependable. And if you want your sort of like safety, security blanket, Witten type tight end, I think you might have him on the roster. And his name is Tommy Sweeney, and he was second on the team in terms of receiving yardage. And it's great to see him after his health thing post COVID. So to see him out there, and I'm rooting for him this season. I hope he'll make the team.
Yeah, I'm definitely rooting for Sweeney as well. Zach, you got any thoughts on pass catchers in general?
Well, first, I do want to say, yes, Tommy Sweeney was very impressive in that preseason game. He had a couple really nice grabs. I forgot which one it was, the one where he had to extend himself out to catch it. And
Davis Webb was like fading away a little bit, and it was a short arm throw, and he did extend well to make that catch and then yards after the catch.
Yeah, it was very impressive. And also, I should also note, too, that Dawson Knox had a pretty impressive catch in traffic again, but obviously that's where he sort of excels. He excels in the spectacular catch area. He just needs to be able to catch in the open field, and we haven't seen that yet, but we'll see. Hollister, my boy Hollister, I can't really say much about him because he didn't really do much. He had that one catch where I think the commentators were saying like maybe if Webb had pump faked first, there could have been open yards, but it's like I think that tight end competition might be wide open at this point still.
Yeah.
Like you got 3 guys still vying for those spots. As for referring back to the question about Gilliam making the roster, I see him making the roster as a fullback / tight end 4 because it does. Last year, they used him basically as a fullback in goal line situations. So he was basically their 4th tight end. He also has that special teams versatility. And in my notes, when I notice him, he gives his all in every single play. Yeah. He may have only been out there for 9 offensive snaps, but even on special teams, he gives his all. I think there was one where he kind of blasted a Detroit player on a kickoff coverage or something. But it's like he's one of those guys where you might think he'd be a practice squatter, but he'll probably end up being on the 53-man roster because of that. But circling back to pass catchers, yeah, agreed, Ryan.
Block.
And I noticed, speaking of Ryan, I saw he's been saying talk about Stevenson. So fine, I'll talk about Stevenson.
If you didn't, I was gonna have to.
We were gonna talk about him anyways. Might as well start it off on that.
We could do that, or we could have bad food takes. That'd be an option too.
I can't wait to see what he has to say now.
Yeah, but Stevenson looked pretty impressive, both as a returner and as a receiver. And like I know that reports out of camp were that he was struggling or whatever, but you got into a live game situation and he showed probably what made the Bills take a flyer on him in the 6th round. Whether or not he continues to show that in the next couple games is yet to be seen. But I am and just for the record too, Ryan, I had him making my premature projection. I had him and McKenzie both making the roster. So, and I think there's still a world where they could both make it.
Yeah.
Like, you think about what Isaiah McKenzie means to this offense and to the return game, assuming he wins that job. He has that speed, and he's the versatility for the jet sweeps and whatnot. So what better than having an understudy to him should he leave or get injured, and you just have someone fill the place right away instead of having to hope that he makes it through waivers onto the practice squad and that you're able to call him up. So I still think that that's a possibility, even though I'm still going to stand behind my Kumerow fascination for now. Hopefully we see him get some action soon.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
So Alec, now I gotta ask you how you feel about Stevenson, but yeah, if you want to expand on any of the other pass catchers, I'll go for it.
I think Stevenson showed the straight line speed that he has, all the speed, all the reason why we actually drafted him. I think he played relatively well on special teams in the return game. And I completely agree with Zach, keeping another return man on the team in case of injury of McKenzie, because he is a small guy. He's going to take some hits, especially on kickoff and stuff. Like, there's big hits that are going to happen. So having a backup for him is never a bad thing. I think that's smart. But like he said, with the tight end room being wide open, I completely agree with there too. I think that Sweeney is, I don't want to say this, but Sweeney is going to take over tight end 1 by the end of the year because of his versatility in blocking and all of that stuff. He can actually do it all. So I think that helped him out a lot. And I think that will definitely be a possibility by the end of the year, is that we see Tommy Sweeney as tight end number 1.
I love it. The spicy takes are coming out. Overreaction Sunday. I love it. This is what preseason is for, though. No, Tommy Sweeney looked nice. There's honestly, when you think about the pass catchers, like, it's Stevenson and Sweeney. It's who we're gonna have to talk about tonight because that's all we really got. Yeah, Chris came in the chat earlier. I posted it earlier. Stevenson was reported to be in a walking boot today. No idea how serious that is. Hopefully it isn't. Yeah, so hopefully it's not too serious, because I think everyone's rooting for that guy. Every Bills fan is rooting for that guy. I will give my 2 cents on Stevenson. I need to agree with Zach, because I had a conversation with someone. I think it was Truth to Hearts in our comments on the Air Raid Hour. And he was saying the exact same thing about how if there's a game day injury to Isaiah McKenzie, you want Stevenson on the roster, on the active roster, so you have a backup kick returner should anything happen on game day. You don't want to have to see McKenzie get hurt and like Micah Hyde is returning kicks and punts for the rest of the game, and then you hope the next week you can get Stevenson on the active roster. It's a lot of roster jumbling and kind of not luck, but a little gamesmanship with the roster management. So it is a bit risky not to keep him in that kind of situation. To speak on his actual game, it was obvious the kick returns, in my opinion. He had 2. I think he really did look good on those kick returns. Ryan, I'll get there. But no, he looked great on kick returns. That little spin move he put on that guy at the top of his kick return, I think it only got to like the 24-yard line, but like it's that kind of like suddenness, the subtle elusiveness matched with his straight line speed. Like that's what makes you a good kick returner. And then I think from then on, he's just going to have to figure out the decision-making component of it. And if he can nail that down, I mean, sky's the limit for him as a returner. But I think what's so interesting is we all projected him, and I think Ryan's a part of this, as someone who can replace McKenzie in the offense as a gadget guy. But I don't know if Marquez Stevenson's a gadget guy on offense, because he was winning and lining up mostly on the boundary as an outside wide receiver. And Ryan said it, he's a go route king. And honestly, most of that is he is slick on his release. He has really great suddenness, like I said, on the release of his route on the stem. And he just, once he gets going, like no one's keeping up with him. And yeah, it was really nice to see him just continuously beat dudes off the line of scrimmage, especially as someone who's not like the biggest wide receiver in the world, but he got off the line well, kept himself clean, his body clean. I thought he had a nice all around game, and he helped his chances of making the roster. But it's still an uphill battle because of, the difficulty of evaluating what the hell was going on with Kumerow, or even Hodgins with one good play with that catch, but then literally getting injured as he gets tackled out of bounds on that catch. So it's a really weird mixed bag of assessments when it comes to the wide receiver room and the tight end room as a whole. Like, I think someone put it in the chat. I'll try to find it quickly. Were you guys upset with that we didn't see more out of Hollister? Like, I think I saw like a run blocking rep on like an outside zone from Hollister. Other than that, like, I think he recovered the Antonio Williams fumble. Like, yeah. I can't assess any of this. Like, there's not much to it. So I think, the jury's still out on what Hollister is going to provide for us this year. But I think we can speculate he's tight end 2 or maybe tight end 3, according to Alec, because, Tommy Sweeney's going to come through. Spicy hot takes only here on the writer's room, of course.
You gotta let everybody know.
You gotta let everyone know early. I mean, this is your overreaction Sunday. All right. Anything else on the pass catchers before we get on to the offensive line, which is a lot of stuff, honestly?
Duke Williams is the wide receiver version of Antonio Williams. He's not going to make the team. Duke's a great story, but sorry, Duke. No separation. Fun to watch, but he's old. I think it's time to move on.
I really wish he caught that boundary pass, not the go ball with Fromm, but the one where it looked like he got his toes down for each foot. So it looked like it. Like, if we actually got an instant replay on that, I know there was one, but if we got like a full challenge on that, I'm not so sure that was going to stand. I feel like that could have been overturned into a catch, but his toes, like being maybe a centimeter off the ground, kind of feels like his chances of making the roster every year. It's just like that close, but it's just not going to happen. So kind of unfortunate for Duke Williams. Definitely a good story, like you said, Adam. But honestly, I kind of hope we cut him loose because I think he could make a roster somewhere in the NFL. Just probably not Buffalo. We're just too stacked in the wide receiver room right now. So we'll move on to the offensive line, and we probably should have segmented it in a way where, offensive line came right after running backs, but it is what it is. We'll go with it this way. So I'm curious what you guys think of the offensive line. And my first question, and I'll ask it to you, Adam, is Cody Ford no longer a bust?
I don't know that he ever really was a bust. I mean, I think,
love it.
We don't know what we have in the guy. When he's been healthy and he's been in the game, he's been serviceable. Like, we win games with him. Has he been the pancake king? No, he's not IHOP over here serving them out. But, I have to say, there have been times. And last night he looked pretty good, looked strong. I feel like you can run behind him. I do think right guard is his more natural position. He looked apparently a little out of place at left guard. And so I don't know. I'm excited for him. I hope he can stay healthy. But to me, he's a giant question mark. A bust to me is when you're healthy, you've been given the opportunity, and you're just failing. And when he's been in there, he's been okay. Maybe not to the level he was drafted, but even at that time, many people felt we reached for him. But he does have a lot of potential, and hopefully he's a guy we can run behind.
Yeah, he looked really good in this game, specifically as a puller coming across. It seems like the Bills are getting back to that pin-pull concept and less of the zone stuff, or at least back to 50-50. Alec, I got to ask you, I know you got your offensive line chops about you, so I'm curious what you think about Cody Ford or really any of the other guys that'll stick out here because there's a lot to talk about, but I'm curious your thoughts on how the O-line played.
Cody Ford really surprised me with how well he was playing after all of the surgeries that we talked about Alex with, both of his shoulders and his knee. So I was really impressed to see how well he was moving, how agile he was, how well he was able to create space in the run game, and how well he was actually pass setting. Like when I was watching him physically pass set and power back inside, he could be the crepe king. Doesn't get not a full pancake, but a partial.
But a crepe. That's good.
So when he was pass setting, he was able to power inside, which is the leg that we were told it was the injured one, was the left one.
Yeah.
So that's nice. I think Spencer Brown looked great in the run game. Definitely needs a little bit more time to work on his pass sets and work with these athletic rushers.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to talk about Bobby Hart. We all know how bad that was.
I appreciate you avoiding the topic.
And then, all the other offensive linemen played relatively well. There wasn't really any too big of errors other than the one we won't speak of.
Zach, dare you speak of him?
The lineman that shall not be named.
He who shall not be named. I think I made my position on very clear prior to this show in that tweet I sent out plugging the show and my preview of my game notes. Like literally, I'll just briefly say it again. This will be the only time I'll say his name. Bobby Hart is a thief of football joy. From that first run that Singletary had where it was callback because
seriously,
he who shall not be named held to the Jake Fromm sack in the fourth quarter. That was disgusting. It literally, I don't even know why he's even on a football field. He should not be allowed within 100 yards of a football field. It's terrible. He literally looked like he had no idea what he was doing. And moving on from that, because I want to talk about some other guys, Spencer Brown in the run game, like you guys have said, he looked really good. He could take my lunch money any day. That's basically, it's true. He could take anybody's lunch money in the run game, but he does need to get better in the pass protection. And again, that may come from going against experienced guys like Addison and Hughes, and also the exciting youngsters of Obata, Rousseau, and Basham. Yeah. And Daryl Johnson we'll talk about him in a little bit. He actually looked pretty impressive too.
Yeah.
He might actually help him out as well. But I will say somebody that I'm seeing in the comments a lot that I don't think anybody's mentioned right now. And when I originally wrote my notes, I was like, I'm not sure whether this would be crazy to say, but Jamil Douglas looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, and he looked pretty good at guard and center. I didn't even realize he could play center.
Neither did I.
Like,
yeah, no, I definitely think, Chris, I actually heard you ask, I think, Matt Perino earlier this afternoon. It's a real thing that people noticed. I think Jamil Douglas is getting some good reps in on the interior of this offensive line, but I think it's an uphill battle for him, especially in a very crowded room specific to the offensive line, because we got guys like
Forrest Lamp, like Butker.
Lamp, Ford, Butker. I guess it's really just between him. I guess he could be that like fifth guy in the middle, or I guess
Bates.
that's the fourth
Bates
guy. Yeah, Bates is playing. I mean,
I think Bates makes
everywhere.
the team because he of the versatility and how many positions he can actually play. He can play all 5 offensive line positions, and that is extremely hard to do.
Yeah,
he's their Jeremiah Searles.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually want to ask how you guys felt about Bates specifically, because he played center for probably the entire first half, did he not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought he was all right. I think serviceable is probably the best word to use for him. But I'm curious, do you guys feel comfortable with him as the backup center? Like if Mitch Morse were to go down, or would you rather move like Feliciano to center and then put like Butker at left guard? Like where are you more comfortable with it? Would you even want Bates to be the next guy up if Morse were to get injured? Adam, I'll start with you.
Well, Feliciano's proven it. I mean,
yeah,
he can hold his own at the center position. I mean, Bates is, to go to a term Zach was talking about earlier, he is your ultimate insurance policy. And you can make the argument, I think Cover One or somebody, maybe Buffalo Rumblings, said earlier today in one of their podcasts that Bates might be the next best pass protecting tackle on the team. So he does have versatility. I think he's worth keeping on the roster for that reason. But yeah, I mean, you put Feliciano at center, you move Bates to guard. I mean, but he can pretty much do everything. So that's a hell of a skill.
Yeah, 100%. So now I need to pivot off of the Bobby Hart talk and specifically talk about the other side of it, which is what do we do? Because it just came out. I think Sean McDermott just had his press conference, and he was saying how Deion isn't exactly close to coming back yet. He didn't exactly respond all that well when he got COVID. So he's still going to take some time to come back. And I think that's exactly why we saw Bobby Hart get so many snaps. But on the other side of it, there's Tommy Doyle, who I thought definitely struggled. But for a 5th-round draft pick who played in the MAC in college versus someone who's played, I think, like 5 years in the NFL and started at offensive tackle, it's a little bit different when you're assessing the two. So I think it's like okay for Doyle to mess up every now and again. But the way Hart was messing up in that game is like, it's just a lot of demerits. It's like that leash is just like almost non-existent. With Doyle, it's like you can make mistakes, and I know you're probably going to learn from them and potentially grow from them. So I'm curious what you guys thought of Doyle specifically, because he's the kind of guy that's going to push Hart off the roster, or if he doesn't play well enough, it could make the Bills go and sign a different veteran offensive tackle. So, Alec, I'm curious, what did you think of Doyle? What do you think we're going to have to do moving forward with the offensive tackle position, considering everything that's going on with Deion Dawkins as well?
So I believe with the Dawkins thing, I believe that by week 1 he will be ready. But obviously we do need to have backups. I think that Doyle shows a lot of potential, and there's a lot of raw talent there that needs to be coached up, much like Spencer Brown. I think both of them can be serviceable players in the next couple of years to play at tackle and even to start at tackle if need be. But at this current moment in time, I definitely could see older free agent offensive tackle coming in and replacing Bobby Hart, and maybe trying to coach up some of the younger guys and give them some help there.
Anyone feel any differently about the tackle position, considering it's, kind of a weird mixed bag right now?
I kind of just figure that they should probably sign another veteran anyways, like just to have that extra body, especially if Deion Dawkins is in fact not close to coming back yet.
Yeah, it's fair.
You want to have that extra depth, and you shouldn't have to rely on Bobby Hart. Oh, sorry, I said his name again. To to play that much of the game. Like, he was in with the first stringers and came back in with the second or third stringers or whatever. It's like, why is that guy still on the field? You should bring in another veteran, just at least for the preseason, just as insurance, to help possibly coach up Tommy Doyle and the technique, help refine Spencer Brown's technique a bit with that other guy. Obviously, Jason Peters probably would have been one of my top options.
I would,
but I heard he signed
same.
with Chicago, so he's going to be helping Tevin Jenkins, which I would love that for him. Yeah. But Russell Okung could be a good option. Maybe if you could get him on if you could get whoever this veteran is on a cheap deal,
favorable
like
deal.
Yeah, exactly. You just bring an extra guy in so that you don't necessarily have to rely on he who shall not be named for the preseason, getting Davis Webb killed or Jake Fromm killed.
Don't forget, Cody Ford in college did play right tackle some of the time, played right guard as well. He has played in the NFL a little bit at right tackle. When he was drafted, that was kind of the position we thought he would be in. And Darrell Williams has played some left tackle, wasn't great at it. But in terms of a backup plan, that's one. It's one of many.
That's a good point.
The issue we're going to run into with veterans. So I've seen a few, people talking about Mitchell Schwartz. He's injured. He's not going to be able to play. If he plays at all this season, it would be the end of the season. We'd have to have somebody really take a deal. I can't imagine Okung would come to just be a swing tackle. I mean, if he comes back, he's going to want to play. Yeah, and he's not going to do it for nothing. It's a real shame we don't have Ty Nsekhe still. He looked good for Dallas the other night. So there's a lot of potential moving and shaking. Bates might be the next option. I don't think Doyle is even close to ready. He's practice squad material to me. Spencer Brown, maybe, but it would scare me to put either of those guys in front of Josh.
Yeah, that's definitely the talking point right now. It's like, what do we do with this offensive line? Should Josh have to get some snaps in the preseason? Zach, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I would like to say, though, yes, Cody Ford did play some right tackle his rookie year with the Bills. And, you talk about, Feliciano possibly moving into center. I just want to say, in general, I'm not in favor of mixing and matching, yo-yoing around offensive linemen out of their natural positions. And that's why I'm kind of hesitant whenever they did put Feliciano in as the backup center. It's he's pretty good as a right guard. He got paid to be a right guard. So why would you move your starting right guard out of his natural position and then put an inferior player in his position, rather than keeping them there and just trying to get by with a backup at center? And
completely
that's,
agree.
Again, part of the reason Bates will probably make the roster. His versatility. He showed some stuff. I think Jamil Douglas could very well, if he continues playing the way he did, he could be that extra guard who ends up being the center backup, which would be great. And as for offensive tackle, just don't mess with Cody Ford. He's finally getting a chance at a position where he can play. He's finally getting his feet under him at guard. Don't move him to offensive tackle just to be an insurance policy.
Yeah, that's definitely where I stop with it. It's I definitely love all the versatility we have on this offensive line, but don't touch Cody Ford. He's the prime investment at this point. We need to finally get our final evaluation of what he is. I think we found a home for him at right guard. Hopefully we don't mess it up, and hopefully he just keeps on the path he's going.
To be clear, I very much agree. I don't want to see Ford ever play right tackle. I don't think he was very good at it. Some people are blasting
but it's a thing he did.
Yeah, he did.
That's all I'm saying is that it is a possibility. So, but no, I do agree with you guys. I want to see him thrive in a position. So,
All right. So that's a lot of offensive line talk. Probably spent a little bit too much time on thou who shall not be named, but we're moving on here, and we're going to the defensive line, who had a really, really nice game. The defensive line as a whole, not even just the ends or the tackles, it was just disruptive. They were very good. But we're gonna start here with the defensive ends because there's a lot of guys, Rolodex of guys that we could talk about. So I think we got to talk about the rookie first. Zach, do you have words on Groot, the big lanky guy out of Miami?
Really, the only thing I can say is Groot. Like, seriously,
Right.
that's like every time I saw a big play from him, that's all I wrote in my notes, because from the sack against Penei Sewell, that he just like basically stiff-armed him en route to Jared Goff, and that was amazing. That was an amazing photo. I forgot who posted that, but it was tremendous to see him do that. One of his first plays from scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in the game, I think there was a point where he could have just tried to go after the quarterback, but instead he tried to like stand up, try to like make the quarterback do something. And he's like right in his face, and probably like, I think he like jumped in the air or something, but it was just great to see him showing what drew the Bills to him in the first round. And he looks, again, if he can keep that up, I think he'd be in a better spot than every one of us thought after the draft when we got him.
Yeah, I'll definitely be the first to admit that I was wrong. I definitely wasn't happy about the draft pick when it was made. I wanted other defensive ends or even Asante Samuel Jr., but I was wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong, especially when it comes to saying a Buffalo Bills player is bad. That's when I love being wrong. So definitely happy with the development of Groot. It looks like he is as quick a learner as advertised. He's learning fast, and you can see it really personified in that game. Adam, I'll move on to you. If you want to piggyback on the Groot talk, by all means. But are there any other defensive ends that you want to talk about, like Daryl Johnson, Basham, Obata?
Well, I mean, really quick, I'll just say about Groot. I mean, go watch young Calais Campbell, and you might get some flashbacks. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I was excited. He looked polished. Harrison Phillips, this is my takeaway. I think this is huge. One technique. Harrison Phillips looks stronger. He was penetrating the pocket last night. He was playing that one technique, and I thought he played it well. They stymied the starting Lions running game. And their offensive line is not that bad. Lions have a lot of weaknesses, but that's not one of them. And Phillips, Oliver, I mean, they were getting after it. And I think the fact that Phillips has really transitioned, because people forget he was a 3 technique when he came in the league.
Yep.
You know, he was the heir apparent to Kyle Williams. He was supposed to be that guy. I feel like he's finally truly transitioned to that one technique, and I think it's going to be him and Star, and that's what you need. And I was really impressed with him. Last thing, I called Obata and Basham the Bruise Brothers in my article. You know, we got Jake and Elwood over here, and the reason I say it is both of them were playing a little past the whistle. Both were playing a little rough, and I liked it. We got to have some bad boys on the roster.
Yeah.
I think those
Yes,
could
sir.
be it.
Yeah, definitely agree with all those thoughts. Loved how Harrison Phillips played. He was disruptive against that starting offensive line, like you mentioned. And I need to echo that. Like, guys, the Lions aren't a good team, but their offensive line is legit. And it does have some promise. So please give the starters, Groot, Epinesa, Oliver, Phillips, even Basham, I think, was rolled in there a little bit while the Lions starting all line was in there. Give them the credit that they deserve, not just going against some garbage Lions team, because that starting offense is really quite serviceable. It's just that maybe that wide receiver room that makes the entire product look a little bit more diminished. But I'm curious, Alec, is there anyone else specifically you want to talk about on the defensive line? Because there's a lot of guys we could talk about. There were a lot of guys that had good games.
I'm going to start with Groot just because that's where everybody else started. I want to say that his hand placement and his hand work on the inside when he's rushing looks outstanding for a rookie. It is crazy to see how well he's able to win hand fights on the inside, especially against the top tackle in the draft, Penei Sewell. Like, he was supposed to be the next big tackle prospect. Like, the best tackle prospect since. Name the best tackle prospect that's been out there. I can't remember at this current moment in time. But he beat him, no problem.
Yeah.
Just one arm, no problem. So that's very impressive. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do for the rest of the year. I'm very excited. Hopefully he can put some more moves together with that, and he's going to be a real problem in upcoming weeks. But I think Daryl Johnson played great, showed great pass rush moves. I think the whole defensive line as a whole, great game. Better than any game we saw last year already in the first preseason game.
Alec, was it just me, or every year Dale Johnson just looked more and more swole?
I swear.
Right?
He gets bigger every year, and just nobody ever talks about it.
He's huge. This guy's a monster.
Yeah.
He's definitely big. They're going for size on that defensive front. And it really could pay off. Those forests or the trees, all the branches in the way for the quarterback, like it's gonna be hard for them to see those passing lanes. I think Zach, you referenced a play specifically where Russo got his hands up, not so specifically intent on getting the sack on the quarterback, but instead realizing that he would be more effective getting his hands in the passing lane. So, yeah, it's really nice to see Rousseau so quickly using his length positively and just knowing how to win with his length and athleticism, because he's not refined in terms of like pass rush moves. He's just like really big, strong, and athletic, and he can win with it. Like he already knows how to win with it. So he's going to be scary once he gets like proper pass rush moves together. So definitely encouraging from that front. I am curious what you guys thought about Boogie Basham, because my initial thoughts were, I've watched the game twice now. My initial thoughts were that he was sluggish. And then I watched it again and I was like, yeah, he did look a little sluggish, maybe a little fatigued. But you can see, contrary to Rousseau, he's very refined in his pass rush moves, and he was hitting the spin move a lot, but like he is very he's very technical the way he pass rushes. He sets up moves, he has counters to his moves. It didn't look as crisp as it did in his college film. So Adam, I'm curious where you stand on Basham at this point. Obviously it's very early, but I'm curious where you stand on him.
Well, I mean, I was a little disappointed. I liked the edge he played with, as I mentioned earlier. I would have liked to have seen more, particularly because he played late in the game, and I would have liked to have seen him dominate some of those late game backups. First game, and frankly, you know, Groot looked more polished than I ever expected he would. So it's hard. These two are going to get compared. I don't think that's fair. Let's remember, you know, he was playing at Wake Forest. You know, you got to wonder, you know, there would be a coaching quality difference between those players. And we haven't even mentioned AJ Epinesa, who you know, won with a speed rush around the edge, which nobody would have guessed Epinesa. So we had some guys. But Basham, again, the thing I liked the most encouraging thing was the edge he brought. He played with a little bit of an edge, and I want that.
Yeah, I definitely saw that for sure. That roughing the passer play, I think the only problem was that his head was just a little bit too high. Like had he like lowered his head and put it more like on the side of the dude's abdomen, no problem with the timing of the tackle. It was just the fact that his helmet went into the quarterback's helmet. So definitely upset that he got that penalty, but it's probably going to be frowned upon by the coaching staff. I definitely also thought one thing about Basham is, he wasn't great when it came to pass rush, but he looked very good when he was setting the edge as a run defender. And he looked all right in that fourth quarter when he was playing on the interior of the defensive line, which segues very well into F.A. Obata, who was literally lining up all over the place. I thought he was effective. Based on everything I've heard out of camp, I would have thought he'd be more effective, especially against the third and fourth string of the Lions, like you just mentioned for Basham. But Zach, I'm curious where you stand with F.A. Obata right now, because he definitely had a good game and showed a lot of versatility.
Oh, definitely. And I'm amazed at how athletic he is, because I remember one play where it wasn't where he ended up making the tackle, I think, down the field. And I was just impressed at how quickly he was able to get to the ball carrier or whatever. He has some speed on him.
Yes.
And like you said, I was thrilled that they were showcasing that flexibility, the inside outside flexibility lined up at like left end, right end, defensive tackle. I was also happy that Basham was showing that too, where they lined up on the edge inside as well. You get to see some of the different looks that you could do. Like you could have Basham, you could theoretically have Basham, Obata, Epinesa, and Groot in on the same play. And you basically have 4 edge rushers playing inside and outside, which would be nice to have.
I'd watch that.
That'd be a crazy ass stunt lineup. Like there'd be
amazing.
Some crazy defensive line stunts going on with that defensive line.
Yeah, that would be nuts.
And also just to give my 2 cents about Ed Oliver, Harrison Phillips, and Daryl Johnson. Oliver and Phillips can also take my lunch money. Like they were just dominating those starters. Like you could tell that they are both going to be a problem this year for opposing QBs, for opposing offensive lines. It's great to see. Good. It's great to see, especially because of the issues they had last year. And Daryl Johnson, I said last week on the writers' room that he's going to have to show something on defense to really stand out and make this roster, considering how loaded that defensive end core is. And getting a sack and doing what he did in that game, that definitely helped. He'll still have to do a little bit more, but he's on the right track.
So this segues perfectly in what I was going to ask Alec. And you guys laughed at me when I said I'm going to keep 7 defensive ends and 11 defensive linemen total on this 53. But based off the way that Daryl Johnson is adding value on defense and how good he is on special teams and F.A. Obata looking good, all these defensive linemen looking good, Alec, is it possible for 11 defensive linemen to crack this 53-man roster?
I mean, definitely a possibility with how they played this last week. Likely, probably not, because there are so many other positions that are so hard, just like this position group, to make, that it's going to be hard to keep an extra player on any position, because then you have to cut a relatively good player at another position. Like if you're going to keep a D end, another D end, or another D tackle or something, you're going to have to cut someone from the linebacking core, the secondary, the tight end room, the wide receiver room, something like that. And you have to checks and balances, figure out what's worth it. I agree.
That's a lot though. That's 17 roster spots. Like in my book, if we're
6
keeping 11
instead of 11 defensive linemen.
Oh, instead, excuse me. I thought it said and. Yeah, that's exactly where the decision making. Excuse me, Jay. That's exactly the decision making. If we keep 11 defensive linemen, it means 5 linebackers in my eyes. And then if we keep 6 linebackers, it means likely 10 defensive linemen. It's gonna be nuts because this segues perfectly again into linebackers because the linebackers played so well. And Adam, you started off talking about Andre Smith, and we got to keep talking about him because he was someone the Bills re-signed this offseason. I think he has like 2 years left on his contract this year and the next year. And he was known primarily as just a special teams guy. I think he had like 60% of his snaps last year, or 60% snaps on special teams last year. I didn't really think he was going to provide all that much on the defensive side of the ball, outside of how he looked in week 17 against the Dolphins, but everyone looked good week 17 against the Dolphins. So I didn't, right? So I didn't think much of it, but Andre Smith came to play. He was running all over the place, had that interception. Obviously, he was called back because of the F.A. Obata roughing the passer, but still great play nonetheless. Zach, do you think Andre Smith earned himself a roster spot, or do you think it's just a little bit too early?
I absolutely think he earned a roster spot. I thought he looked like the best, defender on the field. And he was all over the place. He was making athletic plays. He was fast to the ball. I thought he was getting in passing lanes. That interception, as you mentioned, that was amazing. Mm-hmm. The thing is, to me, this shows the development under McDermott. they have those guys that hang around, and I think the game slowed down for Smith. It's easy for him. He knows this defense now, and it's clicking. You didn't see the hesitation from him. He had never really, impressed me that much. I was actually, before last night, I'd kind of every time I'd seen him, I'm like, okay, special teams, but that was about it. I legitimately, if you said who's your linebacker 4, I'd probably say it's Andre Smith. Now, one thing is, Mr. Smith, you've got to get a nickname, okay? Something. Andre Smith is a little boring. You're number 59. Nothing stands out. We need to get this guy a nickname because I was watching the Lions feed for the game, and they kept calling him the wrong name the whole game. And I'm like, that's Andre Smith there. Anyway, he needs a nickname, just saying. But I thought he was amazing, and I think he locked himself up on the team.
Early shots called. We got all the spicy takes. We got Tommy Sweeney as tight end 1 by the end of the year. Andre Smith has already locked himself onto this roster. Zach, I'm curious, did any other linebackers really tickle your fancy the way that Andre Smith did, or was he just by far and away the MVP of this game?
I would say if I had to pick one linebacker who showed out just as much as Andre Smith, it was Joe Giles Harris. Okay. He was also kind of all over the place. He made some good plays, both on special teams and defense. And considering he's another guy I knew literally nothing about heading into this preseason, he showed up. Andre Smith had his great game. That interception was really nice. I do have to give a shout out to Tyler Matakevich. He made a couple big plays on the first series or so. He did pretty well. Tyrell Dotson also did pretty well for himself today. Sure. Or not today, in that game. But yeah.
It's fair. You watched the game today.
Yeah, Andre the Giant is probably going to be his default nickname. But we'll see if it sticks or not.
I don't know that he can claim that one, but that's fine. By the way, Matakevich, I love Matakevich. Awesome tackler, but you've got to catch that interception, man. Goff threw it right to you. All right. Yeah. I mean, no hate on
diving. He was diving though. I'm not expecting that play. It would have been awesome if he caught it. It really would have been crazy. All right, so we talked about Giles Harris, Matakevich a little bit. We talked about Dodson a little bit, and obviously Andre Smith. Alec, you got any linebackers to clean up with? Any guys we missed?
Not that you missed, but I definitely would like to talk about Matakevich a little bit more. I think he showed us a lot more than people are giving him credit for. He is a great player in the run game. Like, he's a great linebacker in the run game. I think he might have a real spot as linebacker 3, maybe linebacker 4. Because of how well he can play in the run game. Now, his hands and his pass game capability, not as good. We can work with him a little bit there. Milano's really good in pass coverage. I think that could help him out a lot. And I think we have a very strong possibility of moving into having linebackers be our weakest position to one of our stronger positions this year.
Yeah, it's actually crazy how quick that happened considering the depth from last year. But I think, to me, what's interesting yesterday, I think Matakevich, to me, locked himself up a spot, even if you didn't view him as a lock before. I think he locked it up because, like Andre Smith, he showed he's a special teams ace, but he can also add value on defense. Which
last year he had a game where he played, I think, 15 minutes and led the team in tackles. So you're right, Alec. He is a tackling machine.
He's a tackling machine, man.
Yeah, I agree with, Kendall, he is making this team. I think we're all on the same page there. Definitely.
But what then becomes interesting is the game with Andre Smith, because I'm looking at this in terms of playing time. And when I look at it in terms of playing time, Matakevich and Tyrell Dodson were taken off the field relatively quickly, which tells me the Buffalo Bills value them and they don't want to see them get injured. Or at the very least, they know what they have with those guys more than other people on the roster. They're more familiar with what they do. People like Andre Smith, they were on the field. He was on the field all game. I saw him in the fourth quarter as much as I saw him in the first quarter. So they clearly wanted to see something from Andre Smith, and they saw it. And then conversely, they saw some good stuff from Tyrell Dodson. He didn't get a lot of snaps, but I thought he played well. So I'm curious, like, where that's going to go against the Bears moving forward, because I want to see those two kind of square off in that battle. Because to me right now, if you're keeping 5 or 6, both of those guys are at or near the bubble of the 5th or 6th slot at the linebacker crew. So that's where I'm going to be focused moving on to the next game, because you cannot deny how Andre Smith played, but then the coaching staff seems to like Tyrell Dodson. So it's going to be very confusing for me coming up. Last thing I want to add, I didn't ask any of you about him and it didn't come up. Tyrell Adams was a little bit underwhelming for me. He looked good on special teams, but he missed a tackle for loss. You know that play that DeMar Hamlin, we'll get to DeMar Hamlin, he missed that tackle in the open field. Before he missed that tackle in the open field on that run, Tyrell Adams missed a tackle in the backfield, which kind of opened up the glaring run lane. So obviously that's just one play and he shouldn't be assessed based on one play, but I don't feel great about Tyrell Adams moving forward coming out of this game, especially considering how the reports have been about him coming out of training camp so far. It seems like he's taking a little bit of time to acclimate to this defense. So I'm just curious if anyone has any strong opinions on Tyrell Adams.
Not either way.
Yeah.
Right on the fence.
I can't really say anything because I didn't really notice him that much.
Right, exactly.
I think even his mom said, meh.
That's a diss. That's a backhand right to the face. Oh, boy. I hope he's not listening. No, but he's someone that we definitely talked about this offseason because, you know, he had a lot of tackles last year for the Texans, and it didn't really show up. So I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see how he plays moving forward, if he gets more acclimated into this defense, if he looks better. So, yeah, just something to watch. That linebacker battle is going to be interesting. All right, so moving on to the secondary here, we got cornerback, safeties, and our boy Matt Hawk to clean up before we get out of here. Cornerback, will quickly go through Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. I think everyone's in agreement on Levi Wallace being the front runner for CB2 right now.
Yep.
Regardless of how you feel about him in general, I think we can all admit that Levi Wallace is in the driver's seat for CB2.
I'm sorry, Miss Jackson.
I'm for real.
Yeah.
Well done, everybody.
Thank you.
So moving on through the cornerbacks, because I know everyone wants to talk about CB2, but it's quick. It's quick. We'll learn more next week. Hopefully Dane Jackson evens up that battle a little bit just to make it interesting. But I do want to talk about Siran Neal because I really had high hopes for Siran Neal on the defensive side. He's another guy on this roster everyone looks at as a special teams ace, but like Tyler Medikevich and Andre Smith, they really came through and showed how they can add value on defense. To me, Siran Neal looked below average. He had three plays in particular where he got beat by rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown, and on those 3 plays specifically, it was not good. However, when he shifted out of the slot and played against other wide receivers on the boundary, he looked a little bit better. So I'm curious where you stand, Alec, on Siran Neal, because I consider him a lock for the roster just based on special teams. But I'm just like, I'm upset that he couldn't show me more on defense.
I think the versatility is definitely going to be a problem going forward if he's not able to produce and be, able to actually play on defense and give us significant time and not be able to get burnt. I think that will hurt his chances of making the roster. I wouldn't say he's a lock. I'd say he's a lock for like the 85 and like the 75 and stuff, like absolutely a lock there. But for the 53, I don't think you can say he's physically locked up yet. He hasn't showed me enough off of special teams.
That's fair. Yeah. Everyone's different. Some people want like that versatility, that ability to play defense and special teams. Some people are okay with just having a special teams ace. it's definitely going to be an interesting thing to watch. Zach, how do you feel about Siran Neal specifically coming out of that game?
I felt that he left a lot to be desired on the defensive side, which seems to be what the general consensus was for the last couple of years for him in Buffalo. It's like he's exceptional in special teams, and we all know his name because of that. But then you try to put him out on defense, and then he either underwhelms or just doesn't do anything. Like I think it was whoever tweeted from the Air Raid Hour Twitter account a couple of days ago or something about Siran Neal talking about him as a tackler in that wild card game a couple of years ago. And it's like, that's really what comes to a lot of people's mind, is that missed sack that would have possibly ended Houston's season, but instead turned into that Taiwan Jones reception. It's just, but also I think the other thing is too, is he a corner? Is he a safety? I don't really know. Like it just seems like they really need to figure out. I think they're trying him as a corner, but I don't know if he is a corner in my estimation. I'm not sure. I just don't know what to make of him. Again, he's an exceptional special teamer, and he may very well make the team because of that prowess on special teams, and he'll probably be like the 5th corner if he makes the roster. But I don't know. He needs to show a lot more for me in the next couple of preseason games.
No, that's
for me
totally
to have
fair.
any confidence in him.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think a lot of people are in that same boat with you, just kind of wanting more from him on defense specifically. But, you know, when you get burned on a couple of plays, sometimes it looks worse than it actually is, because really outside of those 3 plays, he didn't get targeted, or his man didn't get targeted. So there is something to be said about that. Adam, curious if you got any thoughts on Siran Neal. If not, you can then talk about whoever you want.
Zach, allow me to retort. I disagree with you. I love Siran Neal. He's not just a fantastic special teamer. He's a very willing tackler. He's good in the box. I think that, first of all, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be a problem in this league.
Yes.
Dude is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of matchups, if you said who would be like a terrible matchup for Siran Neal, there's your guy right there.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Now, Neal, I think his ideal position is that more, that big nickel. Ideally, that's what I would like to see him play more. It is true. He seems like a guy without a home in terms of positions, which is good and bad. But it was interesting. They moved him around the field a lot last night, trying to test that versatility. I think St. Brown was a terrible matchup, but I actually believe in Neal a lot, and I'd really like to see him play that sort of Buffalo or big nickel position on defense this season.
Yeah, that's exactly why I had my eyes on him specifically in this game. And you are 100% right. That kind of receiver that St. Brown is the kryptonite for Siran Neal. That quickness, he leaves something a little bit there to be desired, which is exactly why I think he looked better on the boundary versus in the slot, which it will be something to monitor moving forward. But that's just early takeaways on Siran Neal. Who is it? Jay Davis came in and said, honestly, he thinks that Cam Lewis is the best out of all the corners. So I'm curious, does anyone have any thoughts on Cam Lewis? Because I thought Cam Lewis was good. I didn't think that Cam Lewis had the best day. I'll share eventually who I thought had the best day, or at least in my eyes, for cornerbacks. But I didn't think it was Cam Lewis, but I definitely thought that Cam Lewis played well. Anyone have any thoughts on Cam Lewis? Anyone notice him flashing?
Yeah,
I thought he had a very Cam Lewis game.
Yeah. Yeah, he was all right. He had a decent game. Obviously, I think the one play that he stood out, a couple of plays stood out for me. One of them, he was fine in coverage, but the other one was the one where he kind of got caught flat-footed, I think, covering like an inside pass or something, where it was like the guy was wide open. He just saw Cam Lewis was the nearest defender, like behind him, trailing him. I don't quite remember when that was in the game, but that was like the one that stood out. But of course, Cam Lewis has been with this team for a couple of years. He's been on the practice squad. He's fighting for that 5th corner spot. And Kendall, I think I know who you're going to refer to in terms of who you think had the best day at corner. And I'm going to go ahead and say the name Nick McLeod. Is that
You
right?
got it. Yeah, you got it, buddy.
Yeah, he did pretty well. And he also apparently has some acting chops with that fake pick six that he had in there.
I don't think he knew he dropped it. I genuinely, on the replay, hold on. I genuinely think he knew that it went through his arms. But I think he thought because it hit his leg on the way down to the ground, I think he thought that it hit his leg and bounced up back in the air and didn't touch the ground at all. I mean, at that point, ends up in your hands. You might as well return it. Maybe it didn't hit the ground. That's totally just my off-the-cuff observation on that play. But hey, if he knew the whole time, great acting job.
Oh, that's true. And you know how McDermott loves to see his players finish plays, even if there's no play to be had.
True.
Yeah. That being said, I actually noticed the play right after Joe Giles-Harris looked gassed. That was the play. The play right after that, they scored a touchdown on a run, and the whole team just like couldn't get out to the edge because they were probably all meeting Nick McLeod in the end zone, like 70 yards on the other side of the field. So it can sometimes be debilitating to finish plays that don't need to be finished. The whistle's already blown, but. We'll get more into Nick McLeod or Alec. I'm curious. Are there any cornerbacks outside of, I guess, McLeod, or you can talk about McLeod if you want? Cam Lewis, Elijah Griffin, Wild Goose. Anyone else that you want to talk about?
I mean, the only thing I really have to say is Wild Goose didn't look as good as I thought he was going to. I expected a lot more out of him. Kind of underperformed in my opinion. But other than that, you guys spoke really well about the corners that I believe played well.
So I'll give my quick thoughts on some of the corners. I thought Wild Goose, the main thing with Wild Goose is I was hoping he would provide stuff on special teams so it would help him make the roster. He affirmed that. He looked good on special teams. He was the reason that Brandon Powell got blown up on that penalty where he literally got tackled the second he fielded the punt. So that's definitely a knock on him on special teams. But outside of that play, he looked good on special teams. The real problem with Wild Goose was his inability to hinder the wide receiver's stem of the route. He was continuously letting wide receivers clean off the line of scrimmage and get straight down the field, and he was just lost, constantly trailing them. You saw it on that deep, 35-yard reception on the top side of the field at the end of the game. A couple times when he wasn't even targeted, I saw him just absolutely lost at the release of the line of scrimmage. So that's where I'm going to be focusing for him moving forward. I assumed press coverage was going to be natural for him because he's a more physical corner. He just didn't look good at the release. And he was just letting clean releases all day. But to Nick McLeod specifically, he definitely had some areas that he needed refining, but similar to Wild Goose, I thought he added a lot on special teams. He was playing gunner, which is encouraging, and he had some key pass breakups. I think 2 on Sage Surratt in the bottom right side of the end zone, and he did make that pass breakup when it wasn't an interception, but could have been apparently. That was a nice jump of the route. So there was a lot of nice things that we saw from Nick McLeod, but I think the caveat to all of that is he was playing against the threes. So we kind of got to take it with a grain of salt and not assume that he's a lock for the roster, even though I'm super excited about him. Final thoughts on him, though. I think he is the leader in the clubhouse for undrafted free agents to make this roster with that performance.
Yeah, I'd put him above Wild Goose as well. I mean,
right.
Who was drafted. But, I agree with everything you guys have been saying. I think you guys have already said it. I will say one thing about OG, Elijah Griffin. He got burned a lot. He looked lost like Wild Goose. I will say I was impressed with a few moments of physicality from him. It wasn't a lot where I was like, I could pull much from the game.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that I was more impressed with his willingness to get physical than even Wild Goose. So Griffin, I mean, who knows? I mean, those two might be, practice squad material. We'll see.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be interesting if any of those rookie defensive backs, specifically at the corner position, can get on this roster, and if not, which ones will get onto the practice squad, because I think it is a tight battle, especially where we stand right now and what happened after the game against the Lions. All right, so we'll move on to the last position group, and I think there is a key surprise from the safety unit, and I mean, please let me know if you knew that this guy was going to show out like he did. But Josh Thomas looked fantastic. He was not someone I was expecting to see run with, I guess, technically the ones of this game. It was probably technically the twos. But he was in the game early in the first quarter, and he was playing a lot in the second quarter as well. But he was great in run support, super physical, played pretty well in his zone. But really, it was just the instincts and run support that just shocked me. And I was pleasantly surprised to see him in the mix for this battle to make the roster at the tail end of the safety group. So, Alec, I'm curious your initial opinions on Josh Thomas, the UDFA from Appalachian State. I think it was 2020 last year, or anyone else at the safety position.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. He played great. He played great in the run support. He played relatively good in his zone. And overall, there was no real complaints that I had in watching him play. Everybody else, I didn't pay too close attention to. I'm not going to lie to you. I was more focused on the front seven. That's where most of my focus is. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get too much of the safety work, but I definitely noticed him flying downhill and making plays in the run game.
Yeah, it's hard to miss him, Thomas. Like, even when you're not focusing on the secondary, like, Thomas was probably the one that flashed to most people without, like, watching him. Like, if you're watching the football, like, Thomas was the one that you would also see because he was near the football.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. So, Adam, I'm curious your thoughts on Josh Thomas, if you think he's got a spot now, or not a spot now on this roster, but a shot to make this roster, or really how any of the other safeties played in this game.
Well, I mean, I think he's got a shot. I mean, for sure. He doesn't have anything locked up. And I think you guys pretty much said what needs to be said about it. I think he was a bit of a revelation. I'm keen to see if he can repeat this next week. I keep waiting to see more out of Jaquan Johnson. He's not bad, but I keep waiting to see more. I felt like he had a lot of potential, and I've yet to really see it. If we think about, when we eventually will move on from Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer at some point, do we have anybody on the roster that's going to just step in? And Johnson is sort of the assumed heir apparent, but I'm not sure I see it. Hamlin had moments. I know he got hurt, DeMar Hamlin. I mean, but there were times I was impressed, again, sort of his willingness to get to the ball and be physical, but he also missed some stuff. So very mixed bag first game. Who knows? But that's my take.
I'll definitely echo your thoughts on Jaquan Johnson. I did think that he played well. Yeah. But he didn't flash like Josh Thomas did, which obviously kind of rubs you the wrong way because you're hoping someone who's familiar with this roster, he's been on this team for a while, you'd like to see him flash a little bit more. But going back to what I said about Tyrell Dodson getting taken out of the game so early, similarly, Jaquan Johnson got taken out of the game pretty early, which tells me the Bills are familiar and comfortable with his game at the safety position. That being said, people like Josh Thomas and DeMar Hamlin played above the bar enough to push the needle in a way where it's going to make it difficult, or at least a little bit more difficult for Jaquan Johnson, who didn't get a lot of playing time or a lot of opportunities to state his case for a roster spot. So, Zach, I'm curious what you think about the depth behind Hyde and Poyer and who these, I'm assuming it's only going to be 4 safeties that we keep. So I'm curious, after this game, who do you think the 2 behind Poyer and Hyde are going to be? Because it's a tough decision at this point.
Yeah, it really is. All 3 players, Johnson, Thomas, Hamlin, they all made some pretty good plays. Mm-hmm. Again, Thomas was the one who really showed up. And again, he's another one of those players who I knew literally nothing about him entering this preseason. And then after watching this game, I wrote about seven times in my notes, I see you, Josh Thomas, because he just made that many spectacular plays. He did really well. And I also think that DeMar Hamlin did really well too. And he showed his pedigree as a Pitt defensive back, kind of like Dane Jackson, even though I know Dane Jackson struggled in that game, but like both of them coming out of college, they both are kind of those around the ball guys. They like to tackle, the physicality that Chris Janke points out. And also another thing that really stood out to me about Hamlin, he, again, one of those guys who plays through the whistle. Like, remember that one play where the running back stepped out of bounds, but like he kept running and you just saw Hamlin hit him at the end, even though they had already blown the play dead. But it's like, I think that Hamlin is all but a lock at this point. And I feel like a lot of us have been saying that Hamlin probably makes the roster anyways. I believe that he will be that third or fourth safety. And obviously, he showed why. He showed why he deserves to make the roster in this game. Obviously, if he can keep it up, that betters his case. But I think this was a first good impression for him.
I definitely agree with that. My amateur draft scouting of DeMar Hamlin would tell me he's a lock for this roster. I really like him. The instincts he plays with, they came in abundance on Friday night. Like, you could see his instincts. He just knows where to be and when to be there. And it really makes up for any lack of athleticism he might have, because he's always in the right position to make the play. And that's why I think the Bills ultimately like him. And like you said, the Pitt DB stuff, that physicality, the tenacity to come up and run support, he showed that he was every bit of willing to do that. And then, of course, that special team tackle he had in punt coverage was another feather in the cap for him. So coming into that game, where I stood was DeMar Hamlin's a lock to make this team, and it's between Jaquan Johnson, Josh Thomas, and Tariq Thompson for that fourth and final safety spot. Unfortunately, my guy Tariq Thompson didn't come through with much. I'll be eager to watch how he does against the Bears, but he really didn't show me a whole lot, so can't really stick or die on that hill without much evidence to die on. So I'm just gonna walk my way off that hill right now and kind of stay at the foothills of it. Maybe I'll go back up if he has a good game against the Bears. But I definitely think right now where it stands, it's 3-man race for that final spot, or those final 2 spots between Hamlin, Johnson, and Thomas. So it will definitely be something to watch. And before we get out of here, we got to talk about the punter, because there was a punter change this offseason. We have Matt Hawk, not Corey B. And I thought he looked good. Like, the scouting report on him was he's more of a coffin corner guy. He's more of an accuracy guy. Not so much the whole booming leg thing, but he had some punts from the opposite side of the field that really like went down there. I took note of one. I think it was actually the play that Hamlin got the tackle on. He kicked it from the 31, like it left his foot at the Bills' 31-yard line, and it was caught at the Lions' 6-yard line.
Damn.
Can't do fast math, but that's a far punt.
That is a
far punt.
And it had enough hang time for the team's unit to get down there and make the play. So, look, we don't have to spend too much time on it, but are you guys at least, do you feel a little bit better about letting Corey B walk now that we saw some good stuff from Matt Hawk in game 1 or appearance number 1?
Yeah, yes. I'm good. Yes. I think he showed us enough.
Love to hear it. That's all you got to hear. And you know what's even better? And you know what's even the cherry on top of that? He was holding those kicks for Tyler Bass.
Beautiful.
Face of the franchise, Tyler Bass, just splitting the uprights.
Shout out Reed Ferguson for the good snaps.
Yeah, seriously, the whole unit. They look really polished. Like that's what the offseason for. That's why it's great to have like a non-abbreviated offseason this time around. These guys can actually get together this offseason and work on their stuff, get the chemistry going, all that great stuff. So really a lot to break down here from this game, but boy, like it's great to have Bills football back. It's amazing. Like we just got to talk about so much stuff for an hour and 30 minutes with you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it because I had a lot of fun talking about the Buffalo Bills. I mean, we're back. We're finally back.
All the way back.
Yeah.
And we won. I mean, it's a preseason game, but like we still
W
won.
the W.
Yeah, like that's the winning culture. But before we take off, before we sign off, I got to do it, guys. I got to talk about the BF VPN. And if you guys aren't privy to this, we just linked up with NordVPN. We have a partnership with them through the season. You can go find this VPN service at thebfvpn.com. Essentially what it does is it gives you some security and safety as you're roaming around on the internet. You can also kind of hotspot and connect to certain places in the country or even the world. But it's a really great deal for those services, 70% off for the 2-year deal. And you get the first month free for only $371 a month. I don't know if you guys heard it, but Clay did a great job on our film session talking about it. Apparently, Australian Netflix is like the GOAT of Netflix's. They have the Lord of the Rings series and Harry Potter. So, I mean, you guys get yourself the BF VPN and, VPN yourself over to Australia and you can go watch yourself a Harry Potter marathon for free. So, just saying, it's something you could do. BF provides the finest of streaming opportunities. Apparently, we're all over the place. We got our plates full. Anyways, glad to have all of you guys. Adam, how does it feel to be back from the hiatus, talking Buffalo Bills again?
I feel like I haven't missed a beat. It's great. Although, next week I do expect a, little higher quality writer's room in terms of
my dry fit isn't exactly up to snuff.
no, it's been great. I mean, everybody's been amazing. It's I've been following you guys all summer, so that's been awesome. And it's great to be back. I'm happy to be talking with Bills Mafia again. And shout out to Zach. He's been doing an amazing job. I'm constantly impressed.
He sure has been. Zach, you got any great words for to retort or at least acceptfully graciously take those kind words from former editor-in-chief to current editor-in-chief? Kind of awkward.
Well, it's very high praise from the chief emeritus, Adam Amini. It's very high praise, and I appreciate it. And yeah, just the last few months it's been fun, obviously, getting to work with all the writers and getting the content out there. And also it's been a little hectic because I've been working a full-time job, balancing this, but it's good that I finally was able to hire an assistant editor. And this may be sort of breaking news, but Mitchell Broder is the new assistant chief editor at Buffalo Fanatics. Shout out to him.
Yeah, he is.
And I look forward to working with him and, again, all the writers as we head into the regular season, and hopefully all of us head all the way to that ultimate goal. And we all know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say it because it might jinx everything. So
okay. I can't blame you. I'm not going to force it on anyone. No, I'm totally with the superstitions. Alec, I know it's been a long one for you. You hung through this one. You look parched. You look tired, my guy.
It's been a long week, man. It's been a lot of work, a lot of everything. But it's always fun to be on.
Yeah, I hope it wasn't too much for you to come on and talk Bills for an hour and a half or so.
I always have time to talk Buffalo sports.
Love it. That's what you love to hear. That's why we do this, because it's just great fun. All right, well, that is us for the writer's room. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday, the rest of your weekend. But before we go, we got to get a Go Bills from everyone. So for me in the writer's room, Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills. Where else would you rather be?